Actually getting out there and saying what they believe, and with passion. And I'm really worried that the great majority of people here won't speak, won't talk, won't express how they feel. And that is the threat to democracy, not what's going on there.
The people are very happy to have something here representing their voice, you know.
I think it's essential to show an uprising of public opinion.
There may be 80 odd tents here, but that doesn't mean that that's what Occupy Bristol is. Occupy Bristol is everyone who comes by and gives us donations, comes by and just says, I really like what you're doing here, you know, and shows their solidarity, and that's thousands of people.
So, I've been hanging out here down at Occupy for the last week. I've been coming down nearly every day, meeting with the people in the evening, having a good chat. Seems like there's some really positive stuff here that I've experienced. We've just come out of another meeting.
Well, we are in negotiations with the authorities. I mean, they are kind of just standing there stamping, going, but what do you want? We want to get rid of you.
Although she felt a little bit like overwhelmed a little bit, because I'm talking about concepts that are global in their aspect. At the same time, I'm also talking about methods which we could start to bring these solutions to a local level.
It's very difficult to try and have communications with them where we say, okay, well, you're Bristol City Council, and what we want is to end fractional reserve banking. And
there's a set way of doing things that you have to follow in order to be awarded anything from the council.
And to stop the intertwinement between government and corporation.
I was a little bit heavy-handed in the meeting because I did explain, and I was very clear, that actually the Bristol City Council is a corporation, and I can prove that it's a corporation, and here's the documents. And there are questions they don't want to answer, they don't want to look at, they don't want to be honest with themselves. And isn't that the real problem here that we're facing? Is actually, we don't want to look honestly in the mirror about the system that we have. And once we do, and we can see it for the lies and everything that it is, then it actually becomes very easy for us to change, because we can re-empower ourselves.
Those rules aren't just. They're not just rules.
There is no real, in my opinion, any power holding the council back, but it's actually just their own conditioning into what they believe they can achieve that's holding us back right now.
Be in the meeting?
Yeah, and we're going to get there on time.
Together.
There you are. Okay, so what are we doing?
No.
Oh, is it a photograph?
No. It's a video. That's a video.
It's a good idea to say whether it's a video or a photograph.
We're late!
We were running slightly late that day, and I wouldn't have said the meeting went exactly to plan. The vicar started off the meeting in a bad way, in my opinion, by stating that this was an unlawful occupation. I then couldn't help but point out various flaws in his argument. Generally speaking, I had the usual feeling of being ignored. However, I did get to have an interesting conversation with a sergeant from Avon and Somerset Constabulary. Yeah, so basically it seems to me that we seem to get to a bit of a sticking point about the law, you see. Now, I come from the free man movement, basically, right, so we're in lawful rebellion. Okay?
Am I allowed to know your first name?
Yes, Colin. Hi, Colin.
Yeah. I'm Amanda.
Amanda, yes.
I'm a police officer.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's come up, it probably has, the free man movement and a lot of the things that it's about. So I don't know if you know about the judge that was arrested at the start of the year in Birkenhead. Have they told you anything about this?
I don't.
Okay, so basically...
So I need to look at that to understand your movement, do I?
This is our court! Shame on you!
You know, you've got to educate these people.
Absolutely.
A lot of them don't know.
And so basically what they've done is they've started to look more and more into the law.
Okay, I noticed you mentioned treason, which intrigued me.
I was referring, of course, to Albert Burgess's A Case for Treason.
In 1971, the Foreign Office, in a collection of papers which are titled in the Public Records Office FCO 30/1048, told the Heath government that if they signed us up to the European Economic Community, within 3 decades, we would in fact have lost our constitution and ceased to be an independent sovereign state and would merely be a region of Europe. That would mean the end of our constitution and the end of this country as a sovereign state.
The Ministry of Justice now is represented as a corporation on the SEC, which is the Security and Exchange Commission, which means now they are a corporate entity with shareholders.
Armed forces being taken apart, the police being sacked. So just have a read of one of the sheets. It won't hurt you. Okay. Try your boss, see what he says.
This court has been seized under an ancient law in this country to arrest the judge who doesn't provide his own. I'm obliged to arrest you for contempt of court.
In case you missed it, in Birkenhead County Court on the 7th of March 2011, a judge was arrested. Roger Hayes was summoned for unpaid council tax, which he fought through a number of court hearings. During these hearings, he managed to get an agreement that 1. The council themselves were issuing summonses directly, without going through due process. 2. As the council did this, issuing summons themselves, they used letters headed as if the summons had been sent by the court. 3. The council had actually rented the court for the liability hearings, thus the entire playing field had been set up by the local council, contrary to law. During the hearing, immediately prior to the 7th of March, on the 15th of February, Roger had requested that the judge acknowledge his oath of office. The judge, Michael Perk, steadfastly refused to do this over and over again for over 30 minutes. So, when on the 7th of March Roger came to the court case again and asked the judge for his oath and he refused, he ordered an arrest. Here we can see Rusty making a run for it and being bundled off into the corner. This creates enough of a diversion for a dark character to come swooping in from the back of the court. He leaps over the bar. Under common law, the law of the land, each and every one of us is entitled to make a citizen's arrest if we feel the law has been broken. And it's touchdown. The judge is toast.
Because it's in the Magna Carta, it's still law, and the article says we have the right to seize a court where we deem that court to be unlawful. That is what's happened today, and you are officers under common law, and if you do not respect the common law, which is greater than legal legislation every time you read the law books, then you are in breach of the peace yourselves. Do you understand it?
We're going to be doing this more. And we're going to be going to more and more courts until they realise that we're not going away.
There's been a number of conversations going back and forth with the council, so it's not that they haven't been talked to, it's more the fact that they've refused to adjust the record.
Yeah, that sounds about right, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because we don't really do a lot of dealings with the City Council as far as council tax is concerned.
Yeah.
The City Council simply just use the building and our magistrates to conduct their business.
Yeah.
We do very little else to it. We don't enforce any judgments or anything.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised by what you told me. But because we don't deal with the City Council to the same extent that we deal with like our own bailiffs, there's very little we can do without the City Council agreeing to taking a matter of course.
Okay, so is it the council have their own bailiffs in this matter?
Yes, they do. Everything to do with the City Council and enforcing their council tax and liability orders is done through by their own agents. It's got nothing to do with the court. We don't enforce any fines and we don't instruct our own bailiffs.
Oh, right, brilliant, yeah. Okay, yeah, well, that's made things a little bit clearer at least.
It looks like a place of business because that's exactly what it is. It's revenue collection, and this is what they're trying to do here. And they don't want cameras in there because they don't want it exposed. They don't want us knowing and looking and seeing what they're doing.
People that feel passionate enough about direct action as a solution and not having to play by the government or the council's rules.
Now, one of the things is that the council always talk about their powers at law. Now, the interesting thing as a freeman is that I look at the powers at law as actually being advisory rather than obligatory. For example, if you look up power into Black's Law Dictionary, what you actually see is it means the power to act or not act. And that goes the same for legal power as well. And that's why police officers do have discretion, you see. Now, I told her this to the sergeant, and she didn't disagree with me at all. There is no real, in my opinion, any power holding the council back.
It's hard to kind of find this balance and try to utilise what they can give us, which is potentially a lot, and keep that dynamic open.
there is a problem with the world, and just trying to get people to talk about it.
So what we do need to do is have people come together, because collectively, between all of us, we do have the answers. We need a forum where people can learn, where they can become educated, where we can discuss openly what it is that we actually do really need, what our values in society really should be. And from that we can start to grow ideas that we can implement together about how we can slowly step away from this system bit by bit, and hopefully in the process make the average person a lot happier.
In the meeting, the councillor had mentioned that the role of the Occupy movement might already be filled by the Stop the War movement. She suggested that we go and speak to them. Fortunately for me, Martin Summers, who was a long-term member of the Stop the War movement, was on the scene at the Occupy movement to give me his verdict of what he thought this was all about.
Well, I think it's the most exciting political movement that's developed in the Western world in my lifetime. It's grown enormously in a very short space of time. The cutting edge of it is obviously younger people, but they've touched a chord in a much wider segment of the society which are fed up with a criminalised ruling class which is stealing everything that isn't nailed down and leading us off to pointless wars, not pointless from their point of view, pointless from our point of view, and the fight back begins right here, and that's why I'm proud to be here supporting these people today.
Martin Summers was a long-term political activist, and when it came to economic and geopolitical situations, he was a formidable fountain of knowledge.
There is a tremendous value in what the German philosopher Habermas calls Sprach, talking about things, talking about problems instead of brushing them under the carpet and pretending it's all going to be all right. Now, we don't always agree about everything amongst ourselves or as a society. There's bound to be different points of view. That's because human beings are different. But we've got to talk about it and not just pretend that it's all right. It isn't all right. The banking system is on the brink of collapse. The German bond issue this week didn't go through, so even the Germans are now on the rack. There is no hope whatever at the end of this tunnel. The banks are going to collapse, and by the time the banks collapse, they're going to want a war with Iran and Syria kicked off. Now, we have got to stand up and say no. Mario Savio in 1964 in Berkeley University said there comes a time when you've got to throw yourself on the wheels and gears of the system just to try and put a stop to it. And the time to speak up is now, now, now.
Sounds like the council may well have overestimated their allegiances on this one.
Bristol has always been the centre of the world. That's why I live here.
It was true that Bristol had had a strong history of revolution. However, as night time fell on College Green, not everybody was content to see the occupation where it was.
I'd like to see the people of Bristol who, like me, completely disagree with this style of protest in this part of Bristol and the way you're doing it. And I want to see people rise up and take a stand against it.
I find it interesting that this structure, this organisational structure that's present here, hasn't been imposed on anyone. It's simply emerged naturally in an organic manner.
I can see it and I can feel it, that people are starting to get really annoyed with this now. I just hope that those people are going to start coming together.
This phenomena is much more natural than what we perceive in this consumer capitalist system.
My primary concern in Bristol here now is to protect my business, my livelihood and the people that work for me by ridding this site of all this horrendous...
People don't need money and they don't need jobs. They need access to resources and they need to exist in a community.
Because all this here, it just doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit.
You've got 6 million children a year dying of hunger, right? What's the cause of that?
I'm not interested. I just want this site cleaned up and restored back to what it was, which is a beautiful place in Bristol to visit.
I find it interesting that how different people's perception can be of these different structures.
Everyone's paid for the port route, they pay for the recycling, everyone's paid.
My name is Chris and I'm at the Bristol occupation in central Bristol. I sort of see this as a prototype, potentially sustainable eco-community, an open community. We spoke to someone earlier and I was like listening to the language he was using and he was like using sort of derogatory words to describe what's going on here, and in this kind of in an absolutist sense, like this is terrible or this is disgusting, but it isn't. It is in his perception, but my perception is completely different. And I think that the media and our education systems have created a particular mind and a way of thinking which is very absolutist and not at all relativistic, when in actual fact human beings all have their own unique perspective on things.
Okay, everyone. So the question of truth is one of the things, isn't it? You know, a lot of people look at the Occupy movement as an example and have lots of different opinions about it. But one of the things is we've been involved in exposing government corruption and things like that for a long time, and developed a concept called truth, justice, freedom, beauty as a kind of idea of process. So everyone wants this, wants a just world, we want a free world. We want to be able to create a beautiful world. At the centre of that concept is, in a sense, is truth. What is the truth? Because until you get truth, you can't have justice. Until you get justice, you can't have freedom. Until we've got freedom, we don't have even the freedom to create beauty. So the truth does exist. The truth is out there. So we have this concept of like a seed of truth. So we could say that the truth exists. The truth is perfect in the sense it doesn't have any flaws in it. And the truth is absolute as well, which means that there is an absolute truth which is beyond human comprehension. Okay, without truth there can be no justice. Individuated consciousness can experience truth, it cannot know the whole truth. A cohesive collective creates a shared reality. So once people start to come together and share their truth, then they start to form ideas and concepts around that, and then those concepts start to become reality. So in practice, the truth separates into true and untrue information. You can look at manifest truth, it can only exist in relation to that which is not true. The choice between true and untrue allows us free will to decide our own personal truth. So every human being is endowed with this process of free will to decide what they think the truth is and then act in accordance with that. The further application of our consciousness to information creates knowledge. So I just want to have a quick talk about understanding. True and untrue can only be determined really by our experience of the world, and so experience includes, but is not limited to, all the external evidence. So it could be secondary source information, it could be talking to people, or it can be through a direct experience of truth, in other words, an experience you had which proves to you that is the case. From sharing the experience with others, new understandings about the truth are formulated. This is why talking and things like that are very good, because really what we need to do is we need to form these new understandings of how the world operates and how it works. There's another point as well, that not all consensus reality is based in truth. Many people have held ideas as collectives. It's not actually the truth, it's actually based on a lie, but that consensus becomes the reality for those people. And so actually by living out these realities based on false truth, we actually perpetuate a lot of suffering into the world. So one of the things you could say is the quality of your experience, the debate and the analysis that provides a more unbiased judgment of the truth. And next time on The Powerhouse, we head into College Green to build our own construction, to join in the action and help with the communication. All this and more.
A mini wooden house.